Hi everybody, Jake, your resident content cowboy here. Yeehaw! And today is an exciting day. We have a huge amount of downtime and then a new Pokemon releasing into the game. With that could come balance changes, new events, new holoware, lots of things. I think information is going to be coming at us pretty quickly once that happens, and I'm really excited about it. Today in this video, and I will be doing a stream when Trevenant goes live. Tonight it will be for me at 11 p.m. Pacific Standard Time here on my channel. I want to talk today about some of the balance changes I would like to see in the game. Let me take you over to, let's face it, I'm going to do it in the form of a tier list, but I'm going to put the Pokemon in all these categories here. Such a big buff, a little buff, please. The B tier. Still got the B tier. The could use a little nerf category, could use a little nerf, and then destroy this Pokemon with nerfs category. So right now I'm just going to talk you through where I see the Pokemon in the game, what I would like to see. I do not think we're going to see all of this, but I'm just going to talk through every Pokemon briefly about where I think they are sort of balance-wise in the game, and then give them a little placement on this chart here. Let's start with Zeraora. Zeraora is a weird one. So I'm going to put Zeraora for now in the B tier. Here's the issue with Zeraora. Zeraora is kind of bugged, and it recently got a nerf, but I think it's still very good. But there's this weird bug with it, and I don't really know all the details, but basically, at times, Zeraora is doing a crazy amount of damage, that seems unreasonable. I think Zeraora is fine right now. I just think clean up Zeraora, figure out exactly what's going on with some of the actual bug issues with Zeraora, and then I think it's a really good Pokemon, very strong, but not so strong that you can't play a game without him. So I think Zeraora is in a pretty good spot right now. Another Pokemon similar to that, just not with the caveat of having all the bugs, is Alolan Ninetales. I think Alolan Ninetales is good. Maybe you could tweak it to make it a little bit better. I would actually, if we're going to look at anything with Ninetales, I don't think any part of it needs a nerf. I think its Dazzling Gleam Aurora Veil build could use a little bit of a nerf rework. I think maybe make the Aurora Veil a little bit bigger, because it's a pretty small area. So maybe make that a little bit bigger, maybe make Dazzling Gleam a little bit larger. I could see slightly buffing Ninetales, that part of Ninetales kit, but in general, I think Ninetales is in a good spot in the game right now, so I could see Ninetales being in this B tier, but considering I do want part of its kit buffed, I guess, I'll put it in the little buff please category here. Mamoswine, I like Mamoswine. I think Mamoswine's pretty good. I do want to see its Unite buffed, so I guess I'm putting it here into the little buff please, but it's so minor. It's so minor, because I think Mamo's actually really great. I just really personally think its Unite move is super underwhelming. If it was a hair better, I think that Pokemon would be so amazing. Machamp is one that I think also needs a buff. It's weird because when we talk about balance in a game like this, a lot of these things are on the razor's edge of being extremely good. So I don't want Machamp to get a massive bump. I guess I'm not opposed to it, but I don't want it to get a massive bump in all of its stats and moves and stuff like that, because then it just becomes insanely dominant. But we've never really had a time where Machamp was insanely dominant. I think a little buff to Machamp is definitely warranted at this point. They nerfed him a long time ago. It never really made sense to me, and I think it's time to kind of raise Machamp back to prominence a little bit. Venusaur is good. They always mess with Venusaur. Every patch, they're always messing with Venusaur, aren't they? But I think Venusaur is good. I don't think they need to do too much. If they do anything, they'll probably nerf its Petal Dance again, and then buff its Solar Beam to make it even crazier. I don't know what they're doing with Venusaur, but I think Venusaur is really good right now, but not, again, so overpowered that we have to mess with it too hard. Lucario is a weird one, because you're seeing Lucario fall out of prominence right now. I bet you could say it still needs a little nerf to its extreme speed or something like that, but I honestly think it's not as crazy as it used to be, especially with more things becoming popular in the meta, with scoring being a little bit harder, with Pokemon like, Zarina, Greedent playing that top lane role. I think if you do anything to Lucario, it should be minor. I really don't think it needs to be nerfed into oblivion. I think through changing some ways the game has worked with scoring and through nerfing certain parts of Lucario, I actually think Lucario could use a little nerf, but that is about it. Cramorant. please buff my Cram. Please, I'm asking you, if you're up there, okay? Please, Timmy, I know you live in my ceiling. Buff Cram. I really want Cram to get a buff. I think every part of Cram needs a buff, honestly. Again, small changes are huge. When you see small stat changes in a game like this, you think like, oh yeah, that's a little bit, but it's kind of the equivalent of, you know, water that over many years carves the Grand Canyon or something like that. So small changes can actually make a huge difference. It might not seem like it, but I really want Cram to get some love this patch. I really think it needs it. Mr. Mime actually could use a little nerf, probably to its damage with confusion. I think it's pretty intense for a supporter character. Like, it's the way it supports people is by KOing people. But at the same time, I would really like to see Psychic get a buff. In that sense, I could kind of have Mime hang out in the B tier here. It's not so overpowered that it's unbelievable, but if anything, it needs a little confusion nerf, and then I would really like to see Psychic buff, because right now it's just not even close to as good of a move. Greninja, I think, is good. Greninja's solid. I like Greninja. Good, but not too good. Squishy, but does deal a lot of damage. Very glass cannon, you know, when used correctly, really, really brutal. It's gotten some weird... It keeps getting nerfs, buffs, nerfs, buffs. I guess this would be the time for it to get a buff, right? Because it recently had a nerf, but I think it's pretty good. I don't think you have to mess with Greninja too much. Talonflame, please don't touch my Talonflame. Please. I love Talonflame. I could imagine it getting a nerf. I totally could. I love it. Please don't. I want it here. I want it here. But I can imagine it getting a little nerf, maybe damage to fly or something like that. I really don't think it needs it. I honestly think if you start nerfing Talonflame, it's going to become kind of unusable, unfortunately. Back to where it was when it was just way too frail and didn't output enough damage. I want to see it here. That's where I want to see Talonflame. Dragonite, all right, we'll get right to it. I think you need to destroy this Pokemon with nerfs. That's an exaggeration, but I actually want to see Dragonite's Outrage and Extreme Speed buffed. I want to see Dragonite's Unite move, Hyper Beam, Dragon Dance nerfed. There could be many different ways they go about this. One way would be capping the amount of damage done to wild Pokemon, so it wasn't the only Pokemon that could basically secure every single objective in the game. But something has to be done with the Dragon Dance Hyper Beam build. I like it, and I do enjoy playing it, but it's so unfortunate when one Pokemon is so dominant that you kind of have to run it in the meta. And yeah, I think you just need to nerf this Pokemon. You really do. I would like it to be way more in line with other Pokemon in the game. Sylveon, this might be a little controversial. I want a little buff to Sylveon. I think they over-nerfed it. It needed a nerf when it first came out. It was way too powerful. But I think they over-nerfed it. Still a really good Pokemon, but I think it's pretty underwhelming later. Its Mystical Fire has some targeting issues. Hyper Voice doesn't perform as well in the meta right now because of Pokemon like Dragonite and Serena. That's my opinion. Or Greedent as well. Greedent's kind of a monster with that. So I think it would be cool to see a little bit of a buff to Sylveon. It would be minor, but I would like it to... Let's bring its damage back up a little bit here. Wiggly. I can't say destroy this Pokemon with nerfs because they keep nerfing it, but I mean... Don't touch Wiggly. I love Wiggly. Wiggly's so good. But I could imagine them messing with it again. Not only is it great, not only are its stats amazing, but it's also used in 90% of competitive comps. Maybe that's an exaggeration. 75% of competitive teams run a Wiggly. They run it not only in North American meta, which isn't as score focused, but they run it in the Japanese meta, which is crazy score focused. It basically does everything good. So I could see them nerfing Wiggly. It would break my heart a little bit. Snorlax, I think, is good. I think it's good. I think they need to figure out what's going on with block, and they need to definitively say whether or not that block situation is bugged right now. Yeah, I think Snorlax is good. I personally don't think the block thing is the end of the world for that character. I know it's pretty powerful. Block has always been really powerful. The way it can interact with Pokemon around goal and stuff like that now is pretty crazy, but I think it can kind of stay where it is. I think Snorlax is pretty good. Let's see. Greedent. Greedent, I also think they keep nerfing Greedent. I can't imagine them nerfing it again, you know? It's good, but it doesn't. Maybe they do nerf it again. It's not even its stats or anything like that, right? It's just how it performs. It's what it does. It's kind of a monster. I think it's actually a lot closer to balance than it's ever been. I could see people saying no, it needs to move down to the little nerf category. Little nerf, I don't know. I think it's decent. I think they really like Covet and Belch and the way it interacts with its Unite move. They've kind of done to this Pokemon what I think will eventually happen to Dragonite. That's what I'm thinking. Eldegoss. This is a weird one. I don't think you need to nerf or buff Eldegoss. I think the issue with Eldegoss is not that Eldegoss is so much better than the other supports that do the same job. It's just that there really aren't any other supports that do the same job. So sure, you could buff, or excuse me, you could nerf Eldegoss because its healing and its shields and all that are kind of the best situation for a support in the game right now, and it's in every single competitive team comp for the most part. I could see someone saying that, but at the same time, the issue isn't Eldegoss. The issue is we don't have another Eldegoss. It's not like we need to nerf Cinderace. This is imagining a scenario where there's no Greninja. It's not like we need to nerf Cinderace. It's just that we need a Greninja. We need another option. Or Decidueye. We need multiple options for one role, right? So I actually think Eldegoss is fine. I think the issue with Eldegoss and the reason we see it so much, especially in top competitive teams, is just there isn't another Pokemon that does that job, really. There's kind of one, but it really doesn't do the same thing. Zarina could use a little nerf. I don't think it needs to be destroyed. I actually think it's closer to balance than people think. But it's definitely the kind of Pokemon that shreds players who are not sure how to deal with it. It reminds me a little bit, not in the same way, but a little bit of Gengar upon release, where if you don't know how to deal with this Pokemon, it will KO the entire enemy team. So I could see them doing a little nerf to Zarina. However, I do think it's pretty good. Blastoise, solid. Blastoise is solid. They've nerfed Blastoise a lot. It's good. It's not the best. It's really good. I like Blastoise. I don't think they need to mess with Blastoise really at all. I don't see a reason to do anything to it. Maybe they make Rapid Spin literally like a little tiny little teeny hair about a little teeny hair, but I don't think so. No. Slowbro's good. Slowbro's good right now. I mean they've buffed him a few times recently, and yeah. I think that's a great place for Slowbro. Hang out there, Slowbro. I think you're good. You're in the B tier, baby. Still got the B tier. Cinderace is a weird one. Cinderace is a weird one because it's a little more powerful than Greninja, I think. So you could put this in a little nerf category, but I'm kind of tired of them buffing and nerfing Cinderace and Greninja. Like, it's fine that they're powerful. They're not... It's not a Pokemon you can't deal with. It's not super good in lane. If anything, maybe a slight late game nerf, but an early game buff so you could actually play it in lane. Actually, I'll say the same thing for both Greninja and Cinder there. Maybe their early game actually gets a little bit better and we see them in lane more, and their late game changes a little bit so you don't have to give them so much XP to become amazing. I don't know. Right now, I kind of like where both of them are at in this game. I'm just going to set them right next to each other. The order here is irrelevant. I'm just going to set them right next to each other. I like where they're at in the game right now. If anything, maybe they, again, little nerf to their early game and, little buff to their early game, little nerf to their late game. Gardevoir. I don't know why it was recently nerfed, but it's still good. Gardevoir is still really, really good. I like it. I think it's a great Pokemon. I kind of wish they just kept it as strong as it was because it wasn't overpowered and it was finally like really playing well in the game. But in general, it's still super solid. You get your move at 5. You can compete with a lot of enemies for lane because of that. So I like it. I like where Guard's at in the meta right now. I think it's pretty good. And I don't think you need to mess with it too much. Okay, Garchomp. I don't know what to do with Garchomp. Yes, it needs a buff. Of course it needs a buff. But when I don't know, does it need such a big buff? It's so close. Why'd they take away its critical hit ability? I'll never know. It was so close. I don't know what was going on. And you still see some amazing players with Garchomp. I think this Pokemon still needs a little love. It's still a little rough. But in general, I think Garchomp is... It's closer to where it needs to be. than ever before, kind of, and then they took away its crits, and I just have to kind of throw my arms up in the air and go, I don't know what the game wants out of this, but I hope it gets a little love. You know what? Maybe even a big buff. I don't even mind. I don't know. Let's see the Garchomp meta evolve. Let's do it. Char. I like Char. I think Char is pretty good. I think you could see a slight buff to Char, but that's about it. I mean, I think Char's good. Right? I mean, what else? What? Similar to Cinder and Greninja, I think an early game buff would be fine. Like all three of these Pokemon, if you just buff their early game a little bit so that they're more playable in lane rather than having to take jungle, I'm fine with it. Like I'm fine, honestly, I'm fine with knocking down Charizard's Evos one level, all of its evolutions. Give me a 4 Charmeleon and an 8 Charizard. I'm here for that. So I could see that in a little buff category, actually. I could. Blissey. I want to see a little buff for Blissey. Not a big buff. I think a little buff. I think Blissey's really, really good. But if we want Blissey to be more competitive with Eldegoss, I think we can see a little bit of a Blissey buff. And I don't think it would do anything that breaks the game. It's actually my favorite support to play right now. I've been playing so much Blissey. Some games are frustrating because, you know, you just don't have the team around you that you'd like in those moments. But other times, you find a good ally, like a good Serena or, you know, Char or something like that, and you're just following them around, keeping them alive, giving them helping hands. It's pretty fun. It's a really fun Pokemon to play. I think it could use a little buff because we want it to be more competitive with Eldegoss, I would say, if we're kind of looking at where we see Blissey in this game. I think it's really close, and maybe cooldown reduction on soft boiled. I don't think it needs increased healing. I think the healing's actually pretty good. It's just maybe it doesn't get to use it as much as it would like. As far as Safeguard, you know, they've kind of made Safeguard pretty good. Maybe Safeguard could do multiple allies at some point. That might be too crazy. But in general, I think Blissey's pretty good. It could just use a little help to make it a little more competitive with someone like Eldegoss. Pikachu, don't touch Pikachu. Don't you dare. Pikachu's doing really good right now. I know people probably want almost a slight damage output nerf, but come on, Pikachu's finally good. Don't do this to me. Don't break my heart here. I really like Pikachu. Let's not mess with Pikachu right now. I think Pikachu's super solid, and I like that Pikachu's in the meta. I like that it's like good. When the game first came out, you could feel that it just wasn't good enough. It was fun, but not good enough, and now it's good enough, and I like that. Absol, I think is really good, but I almost would want to see a little buff, and this buff would be just to its late game survivability. I've talked about this a lot. I actually think Absol's really good, especially early. I would just want a little bit more late, because what happens in this game is you do well all game with a Pokemon like Absol, and then you get to this final fight around Zapdos Articuno, and you're in a really tough spot. You're not able to help your team the way you could with, say, a lot of these Pokemon. Dragonite, Zarina, Wiggly, Mime, Lucario, even Pikachu, Slowbro. You know, like, you just don't have the bulk in some of these situations to kind of maintain that team fight and the enemy all together. You can't really dive in as well as you'd like, so I think just a little buff to its late game, I think would be good. Gengar. I want to see something with Gengar. I really do. I think Gengar needs some love. I think it's a really fun Pokemon to play. I feel like it needs some sort of mobility or something like that. Someone in one of my comments the other day, I'm sorry I don't remember the name, they mentioned, what if they make it a ranged character? Like, what if they take away its melee attack, but the only time you're going in is with Hex, Sludge Bomb, or Shadow Ball Dream Eater, but in general you're playing at range. Maybe it's almost like Greninja, where it's like, if you're close it's melee, if you're far it's range. I actually think that could be a really cool way to fix Gengar, because it's such a weird Pokemon where it gets in close, it deletes an enemy, it'll take him down, but then it's stuck there. It doesn't have mobility, it's not tanky enough, it's just there to get picked off. So you're kind of, unless you're finding really great spots for it, you're often trading with Gengar, and then it runs into that Absol problem I just talked about a moment ago, where it's there at the end game and it's so weak, and you kind of trade once and you're gone and they're gone, maybe. So I don't know. I would love to see a lot for Gengar. Krusty Boy, just give me back the crits. Give me back my crits! Where are my crits? I just want something for Crustle. I don't know why they nerfed Crustle's critical hit ability. I think just give them back. Why'd you do that to me? What are you doing up there? I hear you guys working on the game. Okay, that's what I want for Crustle. Something like that. I think Crustle's very good, but I do think a few things in the meta have hurt Crustle. So scoring has hurt Crustle. The nerfs have hurt Crustle. And they kind of gave you like a little boosted attack upgrade. I think Crustle needs a buff for sure. Decidueye, I really want to see something for Decidueye. It's kind of bigger picture. It needs some more mobility. I think it's just too, I don't know. I want to see some love for Decidueye. I don't think it's in a good spot right now. And yeah, that's what I want to see. I want to see Decidueye get some love. Its damage output's great. It just needs to be able to survive a little longer or move a little bit better. I know it's a very, very delicate thing, because if all of a sudden this Pokemon becomes crazy mobile and you can't chase it down, it's overpowered, right? But it's hard to have a Pokemon in the game that plays the role of someone like Cinder and Greninja that doesn't have any of the mobility of a Cinder or Greninja. So you need to help Decidueye out. That's my opinion. I think Decidueye needs some help. Trevenant, right down here. Who knows, but I bet when it comes out, it could use a little nerf, right? I feel like that's pretty common for Pokemon who just come out. So I guess my prediction will be is it could use a slight nerf. But, you know, it's a defender, and when they release Mamoswine actually need a little bit of a buff. So we're just going to have to see where Trevenant lands. I have no idea. This is pure speculation. And as always, Crashy. We need to nerf Crashy. We need to destroy Crashy with nerfs. Yeah, there we go. That's what I think they're going to do in this balance update here. And I would switch this all around and mess with it, but it's kind of what's the point, because I'm talking about nerfs and buffs. I'm not talking about placement. So, I mean, because I could like mess around with it and then have people come in and then, you know, have me saying stuff that's like crazy, like, we need to buff Zarina. We have to buff Zarina because Zarina is just so crazy good right now with one build, but the other build is so terrible that it needs an overall buff. And then you see Pokemon like Greedent. Greedent is the best Pokemon in the game, except for Mamoswine, who needs more nerfs than anyone possible. Like, I could do that. I could, but what's the point? All right, let me know what you think in the comments. What do you want to see? I would love to see, if you made it this far in the video, one Pokemon you want to see buffed and one Pokemon you want to see nerfed. Thank you all. I love you. I'll see you tonight for Trevenant. I almost said Serena. Goodbye.